just a few days after the storm had hit, all of us were still in horrid shock. To drive down the beach or to walk up to the building, and there it was not, you know, and it just didn't seem right. I had come to St. Mark's in April of '69 before Camille came in August. And so I'd been through that storm and several others in between that were much less severe. But we walked up that day and been down there a couple days ahead of time and got a piece of plywood and wrote on it, "Bring your chairs, services at 9:30, you know. So people were there and they were in their chairs and things were rocking along fine. And my good friend Duncan Gray III had contacted me and said, "I'll be there with you on that day. I think we're going to have some cameras." And I said, "That's great, Duncan." So we got there and I said, "What are you preaching on?" He said, "I'm not preaching, you are." And I said, "Okay, Bishop, thanks for the prep time, but..." He said, "These are your people. This is your congregation." And I said, "What's left of it, physically, etc." And he said, "No, it's yours." And so I gave that sermon that I'm sure people in similar situations forever in the church have given, that says, we are the church, not these buildings. And of course I began by saying, I want everybody to close your eyes and think about a beautiful little white wood frame church with the green shutters.
A white wood frame building, green shutters, red carpet inside, white colonial pews, red velvet seats, stations on the wall, the altar up front, choir loft in the back, Sunday school building, the parish hall, the coffee's going, the donuts are almost ready. That's not St. Mark's Church.
And I said, that's not St. Mark's. St. Mark's is gone, if that's what you think it is. But if you think it's you and me and the rest of us that we will build on from here, that's what St. Mark's is. And of course, it's the obvious, but sometimes the obvious is what it takes to kind of wake you up. And then we went through all the process of, are we going to stay here and rebuild? Are we going to go somewhere else? And one lady came up to me and she said, "I've been hearing a lot of talk about building back and not building back." And she said, I want to put in my 2 cents. She said, "I want the church to be built back exactly like it was." And I said, that's a possibility. I said, we could build that thing back exactly like it was, and the codes would require us to lift it up, as Pastor Shan has had to do, many feet into the air. And I said, I don't think we want something. No, we don't want something like that. I said, maybe we could sell this property to a large condo and keep the 4th floor for ourselves, and we could have the church. She said, I don't want that. I said, well, now, there's one other option. I said, we can find ourselves a beautiful piece of property, and we can build ourselves a church that feels like it, looks like it, has the same spirit of what we had, but it will be greater and grander and accommodate more people, and be a little farther off from the tidal surge and be a safer place. Well, that might work. I said, why don't you drive out on Calvin Lorraine Road? And she said, well, what's out there? And I said, you go out there and look and see if you can envision our church on that spot. I get a call back. She said, I think that's where we need to go. So that's kind of how we came to it. I'm a pushy person, an impatient person, but I'm not usually somebody that wants to hit you over the head with the hammer. I'd much rather have you say, I think that's a good idea. And so that's how we kind of came to move here. And of course we announced. Everybody knows that the heart move is to build right back where you are, but the head move is to find a better, newer spot. And of course that's what we did.
one of the interesting things about the church on the coast is that this whole church experienced Katrina. They experienced the hurricane, and they experienced it in different ways. But all of the clergy and leadership, just about, well, universally in all of the churches, have turned over. And so there's a lot of new clergy down on the coast. I think the longest tenured priest down here is 5 years. Now, most of us are in our 30s and 40s. Most of us have been priests for a few years. But we all are sharing in this interesting experience of being clergy at churches who have all experienced this trauma, but have also sort of risen out of that in a variety of new and interesting ways. And so it really does feel like we've been co-opted into a resurrection story that started before we got here. By moving off the beach and into this location where we're in the middle of 5 different neighborhoods. And so all of these new families and new people who have shown up. Now a big characteristic of our ministry at St. Mark's is ministry with children and youth and families in a way that hadn't been true before the storm. There had always been families, there had been members of the congregation, but it's a new characteristic of the church, I think. We have the Sunday I got here, one of the first questions was, how many kids can we fit at Vacation Bible School? What a great question. We had over 100 registered, and we hadn't put up a sign. We hadn't put up a flyer that was just word of mouth that we had a great Vacation Bible School, and they were here. And it's grown to the point that we had to break it into 2 this year, where we have a younger one and an older one. So that's a piece of new ministry in this particular place. One of my colleagues took their old parish hall at their former location, and that's grown up into a feeding ministry of homeless and underserved communities here on the coast. And that's a ministry they didn't have before the storm. The congregations down here, we do collaborative youth ministry where we join together to do our EYC. And so that's a new ministry that I think is an innovative way to do that, because we have some larger congregations and smaller congregations. And so we share resources so that we can have an EYC group that's viable and thriving. And so there are lots of different ways that I think the storm changed the way we do ministry. We do really visualize the church as something different than our buildings.